It's been a while since I played an Assassin's Creed game. In fact, I haven't played a series entry since 2013's Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and that so happens to be my favorite entry in the series to date, but we'll get into that in another video. When I was finally able to get my hands on an Xbox Series X, I picked up Assassin's Creed Valhalla to go with it, but I really wanted to revisit the games that I had missed in between Black Flag and that one. However, before that, I had this itch to revisit the beginnings of the franchise and see just how far the series had come since then. With that in mind, I took out my old Assassin's Creed Xbox 360 game disc, popped it into my Series X, and went back to a much simpler and frustrating time in the Assassin's Creed franchise. Hello fellow geeks, Gamer Dad 79 here. Today we are harkening back to 2007 when we were first introduced to what would become a generational spanning franchise known as Assassin's Creed. I have this thing that whenever a new entry in a franchise comes out or I get ready to play a new entry, I like to go back and replay the older titles in order to have this kind of fresh perspective when going in. I do the same things with movies and TV shows. Like for instance, with the new season of Stranger Things that finally hit Netflix recently, I've gone back and started rewatching the first 3 seasons before diving into the new one, just to give me this kind of like fresh perspective. It's just this weird little thing that I do. So without further ado, let's check out the first entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise and figure out what made the game so special at the time and what makes it so frustrating today. Assassin's Creed released November 13th, 2007 for the PS3 and Xbox 360. There was a Windows version that was dubbed the Director's Cut with additional content that was released in 2008, and it was developed by Ubisoft Montreal. The original idea for the game was to expand on Ubisoft Montreal's other major franchise at the time, the Prince of Persia series. Patrice Desilets, I know I'm brutalizing this dude's name, but this guy right here, the director of Prince of Persia, was told to begin work on the next Prince of Persia game in anticipation of Sony and Microsoft's next-gen systems, which at the time were the PS3 and Xbox 360. He wanted to do something different than just another prince character, so after looking through some historical books on secret societies, he came upon material relating to the assassins. Realizing that this could be a cool direction to take the franchise, the game began work under the title Prince of Persia Assassin. The game was to be inspired by the life of Hassan-e-Sabbah, I think I'm saying that right, I'm probably not, the founder of the group known as the Order of Assassins, and it made heavy use of the novel based on his life, Alamut. Looking at this early demo and concept art, it's clear to see the inspiration that became Assassin's Creed later on. All the elements are there, from the hidden blade to assassinations, dealing with crowds, parkour elements, and more. In an alternate reality, it would have been really interesting to see just how the Prince of Persia series would have developed if it would have gone ahead in this direction, instead of becoming its own thing and becoming Assassin's Creed. Eventually, the assassin main character would be developed into Altair, which translates to bird of prey in Arabic. That bird of prey aspect would come into play several times during the development of Altair, from his look to how he moves to how he strikes. You can clearly see the bird of prey inspiration in his hood alone and how it kind of hooks down in the front like a hawk's beak. They wanted to give Altair a kind of this badass edge, and they borrowed elements of the G.I. Joe character Storm Shadow when it came to his design, and you can clearly see the inspiration there. The idea to use the Apple of Eden as a central plot point was initially seen as kind of a bit of a joke, as they thought it would be funny to see all these people fighting over an apple. However, after doing some more research for the game, they found that many medieval paintings depicted members of royalty and other people in power holding spherical objects to represent power and control. They then decided to make it more of an artifact than an actual apple to make it fit with the narrative, and thank goodness for that. One of the earliest ideas for the game, and one that sounds really cool to me, was the devs considered having the player travel through several different cities and have them recount numerous assassinations throughout history, including the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I think this would have been brilliant to experience and would have really given us an interesting spin on the game. The box art is indicative of what the game is all about. I love this image here because it really gives you a sense of what you're in store for. You see Altair here blending in with the crowd, his hidden blade extended, ready to assassinate his targets whomever and wherever they may be. The back of the box really gives us a look at what the game is all about. I love the quote here by Altair. It really gives a look into who his character is, and it helps because he's a bit too stoic throughout the game to be very relatable. It reads, "I have dedicated my life to the study of the deadly arts. I can blend in with any crowd, strike from any direction, and eliminate anyone with a single thrust of my blade. My name is Altair, and my actions will be remembered for ages to come." I just thought that was really badass. The basic plot for Assassin's Creed has bartender Desmond Miles being kidnapped by agents of Abstergo Industries, the world's largest pharmaceutical company. I wonder if they have any ties to Umbrella. Desmond is forced to enter the Animus, this machine that allows people to tap into their genetic memories and see through the eyes of their ancestors. In Desmond's case, this is assassin Altair during the Third Crusade. Abstergo is searching for something, and they believe Desmond, through Altair, will lead them to whatever they are searching for. I personally was always intrigued with the story happening in the modern age, and as the series went on, I really wanted to see an Assassin's Creed game set in the modern era. They touch on that a little bit in the later entries in the series, but never fully dove into it like I really wanted them to. I still think a modern day Assassin's Creed game would be pretty badass. Imagine all the cool gadgets and stuff you can have. One of my favorite aspects of Assassin's Creed is how they gamed the game. For instance, you don't die if you run out of health, or sync bars in this case, but your ancestor was unsynchronized and you had to try again, because Altair dying wasn't what happened in the game's history. In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of Ubisoft's other big game at the time, Prince of Persia. You really didn't die in Prince of Persia, you just rewound time to try again. Both were these really interesting ways of presenting death to the player in a way that made sense in a video game. One of the most revolutionary aspects of the game for its time was the simplicity of walking through and interacting with the throngs of people walking the streets. Before the PS3 and Xbox 360, you weren't allowed to have that many people on the screen. The power in the systems just didn't support it. But with the PS3 and the 360, they were able to put a lot more characters on the screen. I like how you had to gently move through them so as to not knock them down, thereby attracting attention to yourself. However, it may not have been noticeable back then because just how incredible the tech was at the time, but nowadays you can easily see how the AI was programmed to just get in your way as much as possible, so the guards will notice you. It's a minor nitpick for a title that revolutionized gaming, but one that constantly annoyed me throughout my playthrough. Altair's personal journey is a lot of fun to see unfold. He goes from this brash, cocky know-it-all to someone who's humble and can accept the mistakes that he's made in the past, learning from them so as to not repeat them in the future. The voice cast for Assassin's Creed is fantastic and really helped bring the game to life. Nolan North, probably most famous for voicing another of my favorite video game characters, Nathan Drake, was very likable and relatable in the role of Desmond Miles. The always fabulous in almost whatever she does, Kristen Bell was great as Lucy Stillman, and if they ever do a proper live-action adaptation of the series, I still hope they cast her in the role. Philip Shabazz, I think I'm saying that last name right, I brutalize names, known more for his live-action roles in TV shows such as NCIS and SEAL Team, was a very stoic, if not lacking in personality, Altair. Peter Renaday, a very accomplished voice actor from many video games and animated shows such as Metal Gear Solid 2, Ben 10, Gears of War, Batman the Brave and the Bold, and more, was fantastic as Al Mualim. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the amazing voice cast, and without them, I don't think the first game would have been nearly as successful. Looking back at the game now, my biggest issue with it is the repetitiveness. Each mission feels like a carbon copy of the last one, all the way up to the final assassination. Even those feel kind of sameish. Even as you perform some of the side missions around the city, the same voices and lines are heard over and over. I don't know how many times I had to listen to the same response while saving a citizen from corrupt guards.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll find a way to repay this kindness, I swear it. Thank you. Thank you. I'll find a way to repay this kindness, I swear it. Thank you. Thank you. I'll find a way to repay this kindness, I swear it.
The biggest reveal in the game, obviously, is the ending, and it still feels like this big deal to this day. Finding out the apple's origin was a major WTF moment in gaming and sets up what happens in the next several installments of the series. As the game ends, it leaves you with so many questions you are begging for the next game. It's a good thing the game did well enough to warrant a sequel, because that would have been a hell of a way to end things with no closure as to what the heck was going on. Personally, I would love a remake of the first game. I think it would be awesome to update the controls and game design while keeping the same simple story before things got too convoluted in the mythology. Final rating. The game that started a juggernaut of a franchise. To think that 14 years later, spanning 3 different generations of console hardware, that this series would still be going on. Going back to play it now is a little difficult, especially with the repetitive nature of the game and the lack of anything really interesting to do in the semi-open world. However, the story is what really makes this game worth playing again, and harkening back to a time when things weren't so convoluted in the greater mythology. The ending still hits hard and makes you stare in awe and wonder. Only the greats can make you feel like that, and Assassin's Creed makes you feel like that. Because of this, I give the OG Assassin's Creed a 3.5 out of 5. Game design is rough and it can be a slog at times, but the storytelling is top-notch and worth experiencing again, especially if you've never checked it out before. So that's it for today's video, fellow geeks. It would mean the world to me if you would kindly leave a comment down below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you are new. Until next time, fellow geeks, I am GamerDad79. Keep on geeking on.